When we are planning a trip to the national parks, we pretty much come to 3 different park guides in order to decide what we're going to see, the highlights, hiking trails that we want to take, things like that, things we want to know ahead of time. And these are the 3 books that I pretty much use as I'm planning out our park itinerary and what we plan to do. And I'll go through and talk about each of these individually. These 2 are more like itinerary guides and specific trails and things like that. The Atlas is more of kind of a historical conservation, interesting things that you would want to know about the parks, but it doesn't necessarily give you kind of like that day-to-day, here's what you should do on itineraries. So I'll go through and show you all 3 of these, and then it can help you decide which one might be a good fit for you to use in your park planning. And I'll link to all of them below. So we've been to 35 of the national parks, and we bring this guide to every single park. I actually use it as I'm planning, and then because it's small enough to really fit in your backpack, I bring it along with us as we're going places. One of the things to note about it, it is the 8th edition, which is the most recent, but it does only have 59 of the parks, so it's missing the most recent 4. So that would be New River Gorge, Gateway Arch, White Sand Dunes in New Mexico, and I think Indiana Dunes. Yeah, that's probably the last 4. So it's missing the 4 most recent. So my guess is they'll be doing an updated edition sometime soon. The way that it organizes it, it has it by area. So, I mean, oddly enough, Rocky Mountains won't include Black Canyon of the Gunnison. Even though that's in the Rocky Mountains, they stick that in the Southwest. So I think it's a little confusing how they do it, but I guess what's nice is that parks will be next to each other. So, you know, if you're going to Yellowstone, you're probably going to Grand Tetons, and those parks are generally pretty close to each other in the book, instead of being alphabetical where you have to flip through to find it. Although I will say that it's a little frustrating trying to find some parks sometimes because you can't find them in the right order. But what I do like is that it gives you plenty of detailed information. So this is pretty much what the spreads will look like. So here's Theodore Roosevelt National Park. They'll give you a little introduction. They'll tell you the location, and then they give you some historical background and a little bit about the geology and things like that, a general information on how to visit. So for Theodore Roosevelt National Park, they really divide it into the North and South unit. And then they'll go through and kind of give you, not really an itinerary, but some information about what you're going to see in those different areas of the park. So it'll go through and do, like on this case, it's doing the South unit and it's talking about the highlights, and then it goes through and it talks about the North unit and a little bit about the Elkhorn Ranch area. And the nice thing is that it always has a map for the units, and it's not as detailed as the map when you go to the location and you get the park map from NPS, but it's really nice when you're trying to plan and you're trying to have an idea of where are different things in the park and where might you want to camp and stuff like that. You can actually at least see some general information because it does have a park map for every single one of the locations that it lists. And then there's always an information page that gives you just some general information, like what do they have for camping options or lodging, when's kind of the popular time to go, or things you need to know, like if parts of the park are closed in the winter months and stuff like that. And then in Theodore Roosevelt's case, they don't always have this, but they might also have an excursions page where they tell you other things that are in the area that you can go check out and would be cool to see. So that's generally how it works. And then you can see the next page, and they pretty much give that same amount of detail to every park. So even if, you know, Voyageurs is less visited, they're going to give just as much attention to Voyageurs as they would to, say, Yosemite. So I like that feature about it. And of course, the photography is amazing because it's National Geographic. So very great guide, highly recommend it. This is the Lonely Planet National Parks of America guidebook, and I like this book a lot. It talks about America's 59 national parks. Of course, we have 63 national parks, so it's missing the most recent 4. So New River Gorge, Gateway Arch, Indiana Dunes, and White Sands, New Mexico are missing from this book. Who knows when they'll do the next edition, but it's nice. It's a little bit big for your backpack and it's a little bit heavy, but we bring this on our RV trips. I use this ahead of time to plan our trips too. And there's a lot of good information that I like in this book that I don't have in other guidebooks that we use. So generally you have a page where they go through alphabetically all the parks and they tell you where they're at, and within the book they go alphabetical as well, which makes it pretty easy to find something because you can just look for it by the name of the park. And then this is what a spread might look like. So here is Crater Lake. You have pictures. They'll kind of give you some background about the park. And then they do a page where they're highlighting a couple of major things, and they pretty much do this for each of the parks. So they'll tell you kind of when to go, things you need to know about getting there. They usually have some sort of highlighted numbers of some sort. So, they're talking about how much water is there. They'll tell you where you can stay. So in terms of lodging that's within the park or campgrounds, whatever the options are. And then they'll highlight some of the things that they recommend that you do, depending on the time of year that you're there, and then hike this, and they'll point out a few of the popular hikes and things that people do. Although oddly enough, they do not have Cleetwood Cove on this list, which I would recommend. On this particular spread for Crater Lake, it's a 4-page spread. So on this 3rd page, they're giving you some of the wildlife that you would see in this area. And then the thing I like most about this book are these itineraries. And so they'll break this down a different amount depending on the park. So something like Badlands, they might say a few hours. If you only have a few hours, what would you do? If you had a whole day, what would you do? If you had a couple of days, what would you do? Based on what people are usually actually staying. So on Crater Lake, they're assuming that you're probably at least going to spend a day there. What would you do in that time? What would a whole weekend have? And then if you could spend a whole, 3 or 4 days, what would you want to do in that time? And those are really great recommendations, so I like that. The thing to know is that they don't treat all parks equally. So like Dry Tortugas is less visited, of course, than Crater Lake. So Dry Tortugas only gets a 2-page spread. So this is what it looks like. So you get like a quick little itinerary, and then some of that basic information, the background about it, and just the 2 pages. But they do at least cover all of those 59 parks that were mentioned at the beginning. This Atlas of the National Parks book is really a nice, beautiful coffee table book. It's very heavy and it's very large. So this is not the kind of thing that we usually take if we're camping and stuff, just because it's really too much, and it doesn't necessarily have a lot of detailed information about like itineraries and things to see. That's not really the point of the book. This is for somebody who is a national parks lover and you really just want to learn more about the history and the geology and the background and the conservation and all of those types of things related to the national parks. Let me show you what it looks like on the inside. So this is an example of one of the parks. So this is the spread for Glacier National Park. As you can imagine, there's a lot of, conservation, the melting of the glaciers, a lot of stuff that they can discuss about Glacier National Park. So this particular page, or particular spread for Glacier is pretty long. You have quite a few pages dedicated to it. And like this whole page is just showing you where the glaciers are over time. They're giving you some things about the international part of Glacier up into the international park. Lots of information. So this is the kind of thing, and in fact, it keeps going. Here's the end of it. So you have beautiful pictures, lots of information. So if you really are wanting to learn about the park, this is a great book for you. They have the park map, but they don't have every park's map. So on this particular one, they're talking a lot about Glacier, so they have a really nice park map. And I use this in our planning to check out the park map, but they don't always have that much detail on each of the parks. Let me show you one of the other parks. Like, for example, here you go. So Wind Cave, they just have a 1-page spread. And I guess they do have a bit of a map here. Carlsbad, 1-page spread. So not all parks are treated equally in this book. They definitely have more detail to certain parks. And the other thing to note is that it does not have all of the parks. This was released a few years ago, and we currently have 63 parks. This is missing the last 2, the most recent 2, which is New River Gorge and White Sands, national park, which was National Monument. They actually talk a little bit about the National Monument in this book. But overall, beautiful guide. Really the type of thing that if you are a national parks lover, you should really have this, and you can learn a lot more about the areas that you're going to see. Thank you so much for watching those reviews on these 3 park guides. I hope that helped you figure out which one might be useful to add to your collection. If you decide you want to buy one, please consider using our Amazon affiliate link, which I'll put below. If you liked this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. I would appreciate that. And you can subscribe for more content about RV lifestyle and national park items. Thank you so much for watching.